G'day guys, this is Rob from Troutlore.com.au, Australia's fly tying specialist store. Today we're tying my new fly, the Flexo Mudeye. It's one that I've developed for use both fishing for carp and for trout in any of the lakes really where mudeyes are predominant, which is pretty much all of them. It's a quick and easy fly to tie. The purpose of it is that it will land gently on the water. It's not going to create too much of a splash because there is no weight in it outside of the hook, yet it will still turn upside down and ride hook point up as it goes down. The weight of the Flexo material is enough to turn that fly without needing additional weights within it. So it's going to sink slowly, get to the bottom and then ride point up, so you're not going to get snagged. And those fish that are cruising down the bottom looking for mudeyes are likely to pick it up. So let's get started. We're going to start with an Ahrex FW 580 hook in a size 6 and some Flyman's Fishing Co. FishSkull Lane Chocolates body tubing in the black. With that, before the hook goes in the vise, we're going to take that hook and feed it into the body tubing about the length of the hook point and then through the body material itself so that it sticks out like so. Then the hook goes into the vise. Next, we're going to come in with some Veevus 6/0 thread. Many of you will probably like to use GSP when working with materials like this because you want the strength, but I find that GSP is that little bit, well, very much slippery material, and it doesn't like to catch the Flexo tubing as much, so that's why I stick with the standard Veevus thread. Now we're going to pinch that at the rear and lock that down and bring our thread forward. Right up the hook shank and bring it back down the hook shank just for a thread base. Then at that point we're going to take some Zap-A-Gap in the brush on and just place a little bit of that around that tie-in point for where the Flexo tubing ends, and a few more wraps over and around just to lock that in place. And we'll just put a half hitch in there just so that nothing moves. Now we're going to take our Loon razor scissors, which are excellent for cutting synthetics like this tubing. And one edge is slightly serrated, the other is flat. And we're going to bend this forward to find the point where the hook ends. That's how we're going to measure how much we want. Once doing that, we're going to come up the side here and insert our scissors into the rear of that tubing, and we're going to cut the top section of the tube all the way up. Then just bring our thread back into position. The next material is going to be some parachute indicator posts in the hot orange. I'll take one strand of that and tie that in where that Flexo tubing has ended, and then run it back a little bit. Now we're going to create just a little loop like so. Capture that. Get a thread wrap around the hook shank, then another loop. Capture that also. And a thread wrap around the bare hook shank just to lock that in position. You can see those two loops are side by side just to create a little bit of bulk Now we're going to do individual loops running down the hook shank. A couple of wraps over and one wrap on the hook shank. Pinch up the next one, a couple of wraps over it and one on the hook shank. Pinch the next one. Each one's just slightly getting smaller than the previous. And we'll grab one more and then finish that off by trimming him nice and close. Just grab that loose thread there, trim that. So what we've got is almost like one of those leg pattern lumps of the material on there that creates a little bit of a wing-shaped V. Then we're going to open up this flexo tubing and fold it over, then push it back so that the hook eye is extending beyond the front of it, capturing that with our thread, bind that tight, and then a couple of wraps on the hook shank, again in with the Zap-A-Gap, and we just put a little bit of that at that contact point there, and continue with some additional thread wraps just to lock all that in place, and a quick half hitch just to make sure that doesn't slip. Now you'll see we've had some fraying. This is always going to happen when you've trimmed it like so. So we're just going to come in with those razor scissors, grab those little frayed bits, trim them out, and then again the Zap-A-Gap will come up to these corners and just put a little bit on the corners where the tubing started to fray to stop that coming apart. Same on the underside. That'll just hold it. And it's not going to go anywhere once that hardens. Now, before we put the hackle on, we need to smooth out that section where we're going to hackle. Any dry fly hackle is only as good as the base that you lay it on, so we want to even that out. We're going to use Arctic snow dubbing for this. You could use SGS Trilobal or Scud Dub or any nice soft dubbing that you can happy to work with. It's just to fill up that area and smooth it out for us to lay our thread wraps on. So a fairly fine noodle. We're not looking to create any sort of movement or bugginess with the dubbing. We just want to even out the base for where we're going to wrap that hackle. In many respects, it's like building the head on a stimulator. You're just creating a gentle cone down to the hook eye. It gives us a nice even surface to wrap the hackle onto. And we're going to bring the thread back to the rear of that dubbing. Now we're going to take a nice dry fly hackle. Here we're using one from these Troutlore packs. It's a dark brown dun. You can use black or a natural black or a very dark grey. And with one of these feathers, we're going to take all the fibres from the right hand side of the feather and strip them out like so to give us a nice even surface to wrap on. With that, here's one that I've stripped the full feather out of earlier, so we're just working with half of it. We'll pull those other fibres out at the tip and rip them off to expose a bare tip to tie it in. Want to make sure that we always have more exposed area and what we're tying onto, so that the first wrap doesn't come off where there are fibres, and then wrapping it on with the bare centre stem facing inwards, so the fibres naturally wrap out. With that done, we then take the hackle and start making touching wraps, bringing that forward. You want a nice dense hackle, that way when this hits the water it'll actually sit on the surface and act like somewhat like a jassed beetle as it hits the water, and it will float. And with that first strip it'll go under the surface and act like a mud-eye, so you get almost 2 for 1 in this pattern. So nice dense hackle there. I'm going to wrap once behind and in front and behind again. Pull that all out of the way. Try not to bump the camera. Pop a half hitch in. Then we can trim out the excess of that feather, and then with our whip finishing tool come in, do a couple of 3-turn whip finishes. Do that first one and then go around and just make sure that the hackle's all in place. Trim out any errant fibres, and then another whip finish. That's just caught 1 or 2 more, so they're going to snip out before we carry on. And finally we'll just come in with a dot of head cement on bodkin and just coat that thread. There you have it. That is the Flexo Mudeye. From the top it's got a V-shaped, almost calyx-like appearance. Underneath you see the orange shows through quite nicely, gives it that jassed beetle look. From the side it's more of a mud-eye, and that will ride upside down in the water. It's caught fish for me already. It's going to continue to catch fish as the weather warms up and the water warms up. Once the mud-eyes start happening, this is going to be a very effective pattern throughout late spring, early summer. So as usual, all the materials, including these scissors, can be found down there in the comment section. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy tying!